and having come back together in song, no one clapping, but at least we had the tambourine. We need to focus our shared attention on those in need of healing. For members of our congregation, for whom our prayers have been asked, for Leah Jacobson, Joan Thompson, Bert Thompson, Bert Posner, Roberta Schwartz, Jane Barron, Joanne Blau, Shirley Posner, Larry Satcher, Beth Pavlov, Steve Roberts, Herb Wallach, Alan Zuckerman, Leo Wertheim, and for kinfolk and neighbors of our congregants, for whom our prayers have been asked as well. For Robert D'Onofrio, John Vernon, Julie Fitzgerald, Susan Donahue, Margaret Gallivan, Marianne Mulligan, Linda Gagnon, Christy Raymond, Brandon Ben Sharon, Teddy Emerson, Rosa Footlick, Barbara Kretschmer, Mary Finisand, Pete Carochi, Henry Berner, Paula McIver, Sandy Footlick, Karen DeSessa, Jim McDonald, Alba McDonald, Marjorie Sarmiento, Bernie and Barbara Friedrich, Nan Needleman, Rick Wilk, Elaine Veneman, Meyer Gutmann, Ben Chayavav, Heilgel, and Paul Pfeiffer, and those whose names we call out and add to our prayer list. Anyone, please? Leo Worth on the list. Chris Martin. Achim Benya. Thank you. Getting back. Charlie again. Bill, sit down. That's Rosenberg. The men and women of our armed forces injured in the line of duty, recuperating around the world, and the men and women of Tzahal, the Israel Defense Forces, continuing to secure the borders and raise an umbrella protection over the land of our people. For all injured in body and spirit, we share together this prayer for healing. Misha Berach, Abnotenu, Avraham, Sarah, Yitzchak, Vrivka, Yaakov, Rachel, Velea, Uyavarech, Virapet, Elu, Chavorenu, Hacholim. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Yimal Erchamim, Liachlimam, Laptaham, Nachzikam, Lechaviotam, Vishlach, Lehem Mehera, Refuah Shlema, Refuat HaNefesh, Refuat HaGuf, Hashta v'Agla v'Nomar. Amen. May the one who blessed our forebears bless those of the household of Israel, of those of this community, and those precious to us, who on this celebration, Shabbat, this first Shabbat of the month, are in need of so many different kinds of healing. May the one who is known as Harachaman, the compassionate one, show compassion by speedily restoring to them all alike a complete and perfect healing of both body and soul, and let us say, Amen. Our designated drinker tonight. Mitch, I think you were already warming up in the bullpen up here before. Kiddush, you'll find Satellite Siddur, middle of page 10, Kiddush for the eve of Shabbat evening, and those in-house, the big book, page 123. And while you come up to the mic, I'm going to get a transfusion from the cantor.
Go.
I'm her designated drinker.
Someone has to be.
Tuesday was a good day.
The seventh day is consecrated to the eternal God. On Shabbat, eternal sign of creation, we remember that we are created in the divine image. We therefore raise the cup in thanksgiving. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, creator of the fruit of the vine.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava u'b'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron l'maaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila l'mikra'i kodesh zecher l'tzion Mitzrayim ki banu b'chata ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim ושבת קודשך באהבה וברצון הנחלתנו. ברוך אתה אדוני מקדש השבת.
And you handled that so well. How'd you like to slice up some challah too? Don't worry, we have cute assistants waiting in the wings to distribute for you.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz b'te'avon. Hava nagila, hava nagila, hava nagila v'nismecha. Hava nagila, hava nagila, hava nagila v'nismecha.
See, it works with everything.
Hava niranana, hava niranana, hava niranana v'nismecha. Hava niranana, hava niranana, hava niranana v'nismecha. Urachim, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim b'lev sameach, urachim, urachim b'lev sameach.
I came back from summer vacation to find we were doing Hava Nagila in the house, and still nobody's dancing the hora. I'm working hard to build a charismatic shul. We want to have some Yiddish or holy rollers. All right, I see. Well, actually, when Carol and I were engaged, our family's synagogue, during the Oneg Shabbat, the rabbi had an Israeli folk dance teacher come in, and the two of us were doing Zemer Atik and all kinds of exciting things. Yesh Lanu Taish, kiddie dances, and I used to dance a mean Debka Deluna when I was young, a big Arab dance with the Debka Deluna, with the boots kicking and everything. It was very exciting. I have the dilemma as the rabbi of the congregation. I'm here for 3 hours a week. It's the congregation's congregation. While I'm here, it's my pulpit. And the function is that people expect me to teach Torah, to develop a Jewish moral and historical perspective on the issues of our times. And the problem with doing that is, and especially in these times, that if I fail to comment on compelling things in our times, I'm guilty of an abdication, and I disappoint people that were looking to hear a Jewish moral and historical viewpoint on the issues of our times. And if I do comment on a Jewish moral and historical perspective on the issues of our time, somebody gets angry and says, you're getting political and shooting the fish in a barrel. Well, somewhere along the line, we need to talk about things that are happening. This last spring, one of our congregants asked a very quizzical kind of a question, sort of on the fly, halfway between here and the Oneg. He says, Rabbi, what are your thoughts about what's happening at Columbia? And never amplified whether he meant the country or the university. O or U in the middle. Never quite got that. What exactly was it about Columbia? Presumably, it was the repression of the administration insisting on freedom of speech that, amongst other things, was threatening Jews. And therefore, someone out there was threatening to pull their federal funding if they didn't behave themselves and make Jews safe. I want you to know how that backwalashes on us. Always. To give you an idea of just how untrammeled bigotry and Jew hatred is in this country, last spring, when the grocery stores began featuring Coca-Cola with a yellow cap, highlighting the fact that this is specially kosher for Passover. Unlike the usual red cap, it's made not with corn syrup, which Ashkenazic Jews would not eat. It's sweetened with sugar. So suddenly there's this Jewish conspiracy Why are the Jews so special that we get a special Coke that the rest of us don't get? That's how deep and hostile anti-Semitism runs. Well, frankly, I still don't know the question of which Columbia it was, and if it was the university, let's talk about universities. Frankly, for me and Carol, closer to home, what about UCLA? A blue city in a blue state from which $500 million of federal funding was withheld, ostensibly because they were threatening Jews by letting anti-Semites speak on campus, which kind of defeats the purpose of the university campus as a marketplace of ideas. What intrigued me is that the administration got back to them and said, well, tell you what, you can have your $500 million back in funding, but give us $1 billion in exchange. This is called the art of the deal. Back to Columbia, Professor Mahmoud Mamdani. Intriguing. A professor of government in Columbia's School of Anthropology. When I went to university, most of the guys in undergraduate were in English, history, psychology, or political science. Why is a professor of government in the anthropology department and not the political science department? I don't know, but since I'm not a university dean, I don't have to worry about it. That was one question, is the administrative one. Why the government teacher isn't in poli-sci. My question is, why is the professor lecturing from the pulpit, maintaining the perspective that suicide bombing terrorists are legitimate combatants of a legitimate armed force and entitled to protection under the Geneva Convention? Bigger question, his son is now the mayor of New York, largest Jewish community on earth, more Jews in the 5 boroughs than there are in Tel Aviv. That's a really big question. And oh, has it been an exciting week leading up to and beyond the elections. I'm going to suggest we do something daring for Shabbat. Shabbat means relinquishment. Shabbat means Vayishbot Elohim, God stopped creating. Shabbat means relinquishment and letting go. Let's step back. For starters, you and I aren't New Yorkers. We don't got to live there. We live in the swamps. Let's step farther back and be really objective and ponder the interesting lowercase p political and social realities of our time that prompted so many young adults, 18 to 29, to find intriguing the message of somebody who is an intellectual, a social progressive, who's concerned about social justice and civil rights, speaking to them about being opposed to billionaire oligarchs running our society. I find that kind of appealing myself, and I'm much older than 18 or 29. Let's step back even farther. Be proactive and analytical. The man was just elected and hasn't even started the job yet. Why don't we wait and see if there's a problem before we respond to one? My colleague Jeff Salkin, the widely published religious thinker, he runs for the religious news service a marvelous column called Martini Judaism for those who want to be stirred and shaken. Rabbi Salkin says, commenting on the New York election from a Jewish viewpoint, a reality check that there are no illusions, but neither is anything concrete to lash out at or protest against. He says, we will need to work harder. We, including outside New York, will need to work harder to call out anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, which are now virtually indistinguishable from one another. But I have the biggest question of all. Do we Jews, circling the wagon, closing ranks, going through life on yellow alert with shields up and photon torpedoes armed, do we, as Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim, remember that was our Yom Kippur message, do we heirs to a tradition of compassion of justice? Do we have as much investment in the welfare of others? During the COVID pandemic, when there were public demonstrations highlighting the cruelty of institutionalized racism in America, some of the most compassionate Menschy Jews I knew, instead of expressing our historic alignment as partners with the black community in so many social justice things, going back to our having helped establish the NAACP 100 years ago in response to the rise of the new Ku Klux Klan, some of the Menschiest Jews I knew responded to Black Lives Matter by stiffly saying all lives matter, which kind of misses the point. My commute over here on US 41, I go past a sign pointing the way to Alligator Alcatraz. That's honest to God, the name the US government gave it, that's on the signs on the highway. And I go past a billboard that says Alligator Alcatraz, an American shame. And I go past a gift shop that sells souvenir t-shirts for Alligator Alcatraz. No mercy, no escape, promoting it as a wonderful resource to address the problem of all those foreigners that are out to get us, some real Americans. Where do we, Jews, as Rachmanim b'nei Rachramim, stand in terms of our principles as a society? Martin Niemöller now has a reputation as a mensch ever since he went through a concentration camp and came out in 1946 and wrote, "First they came for the communists and I said nothing because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists and I said nothing because I was not a socialist." I got to tell you, before the war, Pastor Niemöller was an anti-Semitic mumser and very naked about it. Well, here's the consideration. I'm sorry he had to suffer in a concentration camp for daring to suggest that the Nazi government was not treating the church nicely. But I'm glad he came out converted. However, first they came for them, and I said nothing because I was not one of them. What do we Jews think about all the thems outside of ourselves? Last week I made the observation, goy in Hebrew is just a sociological term meaning an ethnic group, a gentilic, a nation. Only in Yiddish does it mean any of the people outside of ours. So what is our perspective towards the goyim? I see Jews blithely writing off them, not as human beings who are refugees, but as illegals. They're not even a noun, they're an adjective. Blithely writing them off as illegals because we have credentials. My great-grandpa Gross came over the border legally, we think, from Canada. Fixed his credentials, brought the rest of the family over, and my dad was born here. I have a birth certificate and a passport, so that means we don't have to worry. First they came for them, and I did not care because I was not one of them. I see Jews indifferent to ICE roundups of brown people because we're not that dark a brown. We're not currently the group being rounded up by the brown shirts. But later on in Niemöller's little confessional, which people seem to think is a poem, the next to the last line, then they came for the Jews. A lot of Americans are speaking out. Over the past year, farther. Not because they are lefties or liberals or libtards or snowflakes or Antifa, but people of every political party and every faith are speaking out, challenging our government in a democracy, which is our right to do, because they are compassionate and committed human beings, patriots and people of faith who know how the rest of the poem goes. Our model, as Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim, is Abraham, Avraham Avinu, who in this week's portion When God drops by for lunch, come on by tomorrow for Torah study. We're going to have fun with this one. God drops by for lunch and says, the reason I'm in the neighborhood is I'm going down to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. And Abraham steps up and confronts God. Vayigash. Our regular Torah students remember over the years, this is a magic word. Totally pedestrian, quotidian word. He approached, but Vayigash. Little shepherd boy David, Vayigash, approached Goliath. Shepherd boy, farm boy Shaul, Saul, approaches the old man in the gate only to find out it's the prophet Samuel who anoints him. Vayigash is about a crossroads of destiny. Abraham achieves his spiritual excellence when he steps up to the plate and dares to confront God and defy God to go down and destroy Sodom and Gomorrah when there have to be some decent people down there. Ha'af tispet tzaddik im rasha is his challenge to God. Heaven forbid, it's funny when you think about it, Chalila lecha, heaven forbid that you, capital Y, should do such a thing. Will the judge of all the universe not do justly? Our Jewish sages of antiquity praise our patriarch Abraham because unlike his 10 generations back ancestor Noah, when God said, I'm going to wipe out the whole world, but you I'm going to save. And he said, okay, and went and got his tools. But 10 generations later, God tells Abraham, I'm going to do a surgical strike on just that one city. And Abraham faces off and says, over my dead body. And Abraham is faulted by our sages of antiquity because he did not do enough. What if there's 50 righteous people? What if there's 45? What if there's 40? What if there's 30? What if there's 20? He says to God, here's my last offer. What if there's only 10? You know the Hasidic story on Yom Kippur? Moshe the tailor walks up in front of the open ark and he's Ribono Shel Olam, sovereign of the universe. I admit that when that stinking nobleman brought me that gorgeous cloth last week to make him a cloak, I made the seams a little small and kept a piece for myself. But you have done much worse things. You have sent plagues and famines and terrible things that killed off thousands of people. So I tell you what, God, says Moshe the tailor, I'll forgive you if you forgive me. And then he turns and goes back to his seat. The rabbi walks over and gives Moshe the tailor a gentle a gentle slap on the face and says, you had him over the barrel. You could have brought the Mashiach. Our sages have the audacity to criticize Abraham for being Moshe the tailor and not having enough audacity. But what makes him brilliant is that at least he stepped up to the plate. And he did it without self-interest. Because he didn't know anybody in Sodom and Gomorrah. He did it on behalf of strangers he'd never met. Because he set the tone for all of Jewish history by his conviction that there could be no holiness in a world where there is not also love, compassion, and justice. Shabbat Shalom.